Without a voice, a picture can paint 1,000 words, and behind every artist, there is an ordinary person. We all have a story. Some are just darker than most, as though they don't feel safe, and wishing that they could control their broken instead of having their broken control them. And they feel lost. Lived in fear makes them feel unsafe and powerless. The first thing people think about when it comes to spiritual awakening or spirituality is that it's a religion, which is not true at all. Religion is a codified system of beliefs, practices, worships, and behaviours that is taking place in a community of like-minded believers. Spirituality is a search for purpose and direction and becoming more aware of your own intuition and self-actualization. There's also this movement in a radical and permanent shift in our perception of the world that we live in, moving beyond the sense of being an individual or person with the urge to experience freedom and finding the ultimate reality of who we are. When we are not concerned in living and satisfied with the material side of life, takes us out of that egotistic self of selfishness, wanting to uplift humanity. In order to assess the quality of spiritual awakening, as well as the meta-analysis and also the medical literature, was basically assuming that human consciousness and the effects were that conscious intentions cannot act remotely. Like the law of attraction, which is governed by the universe, which is again governed by our own thoughts, because it has no scientific proof, of course a lot of people are going to say that it doesn't exist. The reason being is because it violates the accepted canons of science. And because spirituality is talking about a spiritual path that leads or ascends to a higher power, the argument there will basically state that it is outside the domain of empirical science. And that is because people are searching for correlations between spirituality, seeing its believing concept, with observable effects in the world. And they differ on the question of mechanism, which is an accepted strategy within science. Prior to my own awakening, I didn't want to be on any medication or antidepressants because I realized what it was doing to my body. And so when I wanted to self-heal just with meditation, believing that if we can wire our brains to believe that we can't, then we can sure as hell rewire our brains to believe that we can. Of course, it would just take time. And when I pointed this out to my doctors, self-healing was not accepted as a form of treatment. And later on, I found out that spirituality and healing was derided as unscientific nonsense. Regarding scientific beliefs on medicine and the influence of the biomedical model dominating the healthcare system, that a chemical imbalance in the brain can explain why mental illness occurs, encourages that medical model belief in psychological problems, and therefore, even in a misdiagnosis, the appropriate medication is prescribed. Which brings me to the topic of the law of attraction. This is a topic that is now worldwide popular, but with the question, does it exist? And I will connect the law of attraction with spirituality, and I can definitely state that yes, the law of attraction is real. The reason why I believe that there's so many skeptics is, again, human evolution and how people define labels such as something that sounds so unworldly couldn't possibly exist. So the rules being have a vision, create a vision board, ask for it, believe in it, visualize it, let go of expectations, and just wait. By removing those steps to take, there will be no question of, did we do it right? What if I did it wrong? Depending on the results. And so the only way I can express that it is real is to take us back to childhood. And so I'll use a butterfly as an example. As a child, we see a pretty looking butterfly, and the first thing we want to do is go chase that pretty looking butterfly. And of course, that's what we do. Key aspect there is that there is no hesitation, there are no thoughts, and there are no external influences to make us believe that we can't. We go ahead and we chase the butterfly. And that itself puts all of the rules into play. Half the time we don't normally catch it, but we come back without feeling disappointed. But the fact of basically seeing something as pretty as a butterfly is all that's left in our mind. Imagine seeing a butterfly with the thought before we chase it, I want to go after it, but what if I can't catch it? Therefore, creates hesitation. When we are wanting materialistic things, such as love, and then society puts a show like The Bachelor, one man looking for love, but first of all dating numerous women, and then dumping them with a rose, you'd have to really question on how many things society's made us believe is real. The law of attraction itself is non-judgmental, like the law of gravity. Gravity doesn't suspend itself if you're going to fall because of a judgment that it might be bad for you. There is an intelligence that runs throughout the universe connecting each of us with the divine, our highest good, our higher power. We are the co-creators of our reality. And so when they try to state that, again, the law of attraction is a myth or that it doesn't work, is also saying that we, again, as individuals, don't have the ability in order to create our reality. Which is why I mentioned to remove all labels. Because as long as something has a label, society will always try to define it. And when society tries to define it, there will always be a question of doubt. We all have a free will to live in any way that we so choose, in awareness, in abundance, in curiosity, in lack of limitation, in denial, in prosperity, and in judgment. Science shows that the synapses in our brain, the electrical signals that we send out when we have a thought, doesn't just stay in our brain. Hence, when utilizing the law of attraction, our thoughts are vibrations sending out the signals, which requires positive thinking. But the foundation of the universal laws and the quantum physics in spiritual law and spirituality is that our thoughts are energetic impulses that we are sending out to the universe. And so when we observe the negativity and also the positivity, we live with those two labels. We know the feeling of what it's like to be negative and both positive, accepting that they both coexist without questioning it. And so spiritual law doesn't discern whether we inwardly or outwardly direct criticism. By observing it, our thought naturally transforms. And that itself is mentally, emotionally, financially, and spiritually a reward to set that intention of letting go of expectations. As I mentioned earlier, it's going back to our childhood days, where everything was possible and nothing was impossible. We all go through the awakening process differently. It doesn't have to be in a form which manifests the physical symptoms in our body that can affect our mind mentally. In the clinical setting, we commonly find that psychosis is a state of disruption and also disturbance characterized by fear, and then of course being labeled with what some would call the discomforts of madness. After a while, I stopped looking for external help and I started writing, and I wrote my darkness in a form of poetry, furiously writing down the words on the paper as if my pen was possessed. I just don't remember the words forming in my mind as I wrote them. But I could see myself sitting there reading my own writing and the morbid words that I was writing, labeling myself as crazy. I did exactly what the doctors had done, which I then learned to sort of see myself without judgment in a way of releasing my inner demons. We are all artists. We all have a story to tell. And again, some are just darker than most. And like a fruit on a poison tree, it's an affliction. And giving up is the best option on giving up itself. Except that we forget that everything has an opposite. And the definition of the word broken has the suggestion that broken is also fixable.